Joining me now is our panel, NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli, USA Today Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page, Navin, Nayak, President and Executive Director of the Center for American Progress Action Fund, and Dnaielle Pletka, a Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and an NBC News contributor. And you really kept your discipline. Your exasperation, your size. I can't wait to get to you on this. But Mike, I sit here, and if Anita Dunn could have designed a fallout, this is exact. I mean, you pick your enemy sometimes. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Rick Scott have both been helping the White House take what was, I think, a good night and turned it into something more.
First of all, can we just step back a moment and appreciate when's the last time we've had a good old-fashioned policy debate between one party and the other?
Are they debating anything, actually?
That's a good question, but for the last 2 years, it's all been Democrats versus Democrats on policy, and then there's the Trump era, which is a whole separate story. But this speaks to one of the things, really two strategic objectives of the White House. Chuck, you and I hear all the time the White House saying the issues that you're talking about or obsessed with are not the issues that the American people care about, the people who will decide elections care about.
They care about resort fees.
They care about, they do actually, they care about airline fees, and they care about Social Security and Medicare. And so the president has baited the other party into an actual policy fight here. So that's one objective. The other is to divide and conquer. I mean, the president says he wants to unite the country. That's been hard for him. So it's easy to divide Republicans. And that's been obvious this entire year so far. There's a reason Mitch McConnell was with President Biden at a bridge at the moment that Kevin McCarthy was trying to win a speakership vote. And so this week he took maybe even a page out of the Republican playbook. Let's pick an extreme position in the other party and then let the rest of the party try to fight it out. This is really part of the 2024 strategy too, which is show that not all the party maybe is the MAGA wing, but they still are defined by the MAGA wing.
Susan, it really did remind me a bit of how Republicans effectively took defund the police and painted the entire party with it. And you'd have Democrats scream almost the way Republicans, no, no, no. And you're like, yeah, well, that's welcome to the NFL.
And it worked.
And it worked.
It worked. It hurt Democrats who never wanted to defund the police.
Right.
And this is hurting Republicans who have no intention of cutting Medicare or Social Security. Any day that the White House can have Republicans saying, we don't want to cut these, stop talking about this, and arguing with each other, that is a great day for Joe Biden.
Danny, I want to get to what does the Republican, what are the three, remember the three legs of the stool? What happened to these? There's only one leg left. It's the social issues. It's culture issues.
It's just stool. Let's just face it.
You think it's just on the floor now? Well, all the legs are gone.
Well, it has another meaning, too.
There's a divide. I mean, national defense, there's a divide on that in this party, right? We know this. And I understand being afraid of Social Security and Medicare is an issue. But now it seems like the party, okay, fine. It's a total walk away, is it not?
But look, I mean, you said this is a good day for Joe Biden. This is all gross. And I know we can agree on this, no matter where we stand on the political spectrum. I work at a think tank, you work at a think tank. We're nerds. One of my colleagues, Andrew Biggs, had a really good piece in Forbes today. He laid it out. We spent last year $1.2 trillion on Social Security, $726 billion on Medicare. By 2050, I know Joe Biden won't care what happens in 2050, but it'll be $4.7 trillion. This is something we have to talk about. You're going to get that money that your kids are paying for. I'm going to get that money that our kids are paying for. Maybe our political leaders could have a serious conversation instead of going, oh, owned you, loser. Right? I mean, that's what's sad about this.
It is. Look,
sorry
Democrats
to inject policy.
No. What's interesting here is the Democratic Party's moved on this. I mean, Barack Obama was ready to negotiate on these issues.
Well,
and Joe Biden's like, nope, we're done.
Well, I mean, I think the contrast he's drawing is between what Rick Scott has put out there, and then let's be honest, Rick Scott is the most compelling foil, but Ron Johnson just this week doubled down, tripled down, saying no, I don't think it should be every 5 years. I think it should be every year, and we should make this a program that Congress has to reauthorize every year. And then you do have the Republican Study Committee has approved a budget that's 75% of the last Congress of Republicans who do want to cut Social Security and make Medicare a voucher. So I actually don't know that. I think what's actually happening here is they're realizing how unpopular these policies are. Not that they actually don't really support them, to your point. I think they actually do believe this is what needs to happen. I just think they're recognizing just how unpopular it is.
People like money.
Yeah. I want to, look,
pay for some of these benefits.
I want to pivot here back to the balloon here a minute, because I do think, Susan, and we've been around here a long time, about there's a lot of CYA going on. And I'm like, I think that this is, you know, everybody takes a moment like this and thinks, okay, team red, team blue. And I think this is a case where it's team bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that at some point here, and I do think you're starting to see members of Congress go, wait a minute. You know, Brian Schatz is one of them. Like, nobody wants to, you know, I think there's a feeling that we're not being told everything. And today's briefing is just proof of it.
Not a feeling. What if nobody had asked about the balloon? Would Kirby gone ahead and announced that we had just shot down something else from the sky?
Yeah.
You know, there's even when you don't know everything, if you're in charge of the United States government, if you're the president, you have an obligation to keep people, Americans, informed about what's going on, especially when it comes to national security.
We shot down a fighter jet. How do you not make that? Look, I got two pieces of news to start my briefing with. The president's going to Poland. Okay. Yeah. Look, we shot down. Why wait for a question?
And in the wake of last week, where they were also not transparent, we had to have people in Montana say, what is that thing up in the sky, before the administration told us what it was. That's not the way things are supposed to work.
Mike, you're our Bidenologist here. What's this about?
I think what the White House is really struggling with here is, and Dan laid this out a little bit, the different treatment between these two situations, right? Well, originally it was, yeah, I ordered it shot down out of the sky and I was told to wait, and the White House was spinning that how much we learned by tracking the balloon as it, you know, traveled over the U.S. airspace and then dramatically brought it down. In this case, they were quicker with the trigger finger, it sounds like, and I think it speaks to the political reality that they weren't quite as prepared for, perhaps, as they should have been. The reaction to the balloon last week did overhang the State of the Union walk-up in a way that really wasn't welcome at the White House. And so I think now the posture seems to be shoot first and maybe ask questions later, and there's an awful lot of them.
Danny, you're very familiar with the bureaucracy of the intel community back in the day, and you know, sometimes this is not partisan, sometimes this is
incompetence,
turf, right? And a little bit of turf protection, even too. What do you sense is going on here?
I suspect they didn't think it was a big deal, and then they realized that other people did think it was a big deal, and then they realized that it made them look really weak. And I hate to tell everybody, and I know I'm not revealing anything classified, but from space, we can see your license plate.
Yeah.
How the hell did we not know what this was? How did we not know what the car thing was today?
I think they got under our radar. It looks clear to me that they were in the dark for 3 or 4 years on this program.
But the message this sends to the Chinese and the way we've handled it is so bad. And I say that not as a partisan matter at all. If it had been a Republican president, it also would have been bad. We're not on our game.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the fact that this has been going on for many years, as I think is sort of an indictment of a lot of administrations and a lot of the infrastructure. I do think there might be a less cynical reason in this case too, which is if they are giving a pretty credible answer, at least on the altitude being a potential risk versus the altitude last time, and until we hear otherwise,
it was closer over water too this time.
Right, I think there was an opportunity to shoot it down. So I don't know that we have to be fully cynical about the answers, but I appreciate.
No, it is sort of. I guess it's the way they dribbled it out, and that's what's been here.
You know, you want us to be less cynical. Tell us what's going on in real time.
Except that the same thing happens, which is, you know, they don't have all the answers yet either, and so the minute they announce something, they don't know what it is.
You don't have to keep saying, I don't know.
But this is the problem.
I don't know. I didn't know.
Inevitably, the minute they announce it, there are more questions, and when the answer is, I don't know, that feels like stonewalling or distrust, and I actually think they may not know yet or clearly are not ready to answer.
But what this has done is, speaking of unity, it's brought the country together on getting tougher on China, and I do think we're headed into, I mean, it does seem as if that China is now, at least diplomatically, not going to work with us right now.
Well, this is what's so significant, was the Blinken trip was in the sort of lane of we're trying to repair the relationship again. Things obviously, especially with the president's own comments about Taiwan on multiple trips to Asia last year, were at a heightened level of tension. This was supposed to be a part of, all right, let's...
By the way, McCarthy's going to go to Taiwan soon. And he kind of has to, and that's only going to create more problems.
And what's interesting is the White House actually thinks that Taiwan is not as interested in bringing McCarthy over the way that they were welcoming Speaker Pelosi, because they recognize that when the dust-up that was caused by the Pelosi visit led China to have to respond in such a public way that raised the concern level so high. They're not sure that China can react even less to a new speaker coming the same way this time. And so there's a lot of concern about this potential visit in the White House.
Mike Pence being subpoenaed, Susan.
Yeah.
Significant?
Yeah. The former vice president,
Yeah.
a presidential hopeful, is being subpoenaed to testify in a matter involving the former president, also a presidential
Wouldn't it have been
contender.
weird if he hadn't been subpoenaed in this investigation?
Well, it's not surprising, but
Right.
it's important, and it's probably a sign that this investigation, this inquiry, is pretty well along. You'd think they would go after Pence when they had talked to everybody lower ranking than Pence was.
Danny, if you were Trump, would you try to fight this on executive privilege or just let this go?
I mean, he's tried to fight it on executive privilege. He's tried to fight everything on executive privilege. It's been a losing battle all along. I don't think that's the game Mike Pence plays. Anyone who's
Well,
read his
he
book.
wouldn't do it. No, I don't think he would do it, but Trump's lawyers could still try to.
Well, they could
Yeah.
try, but they haven't exactly had a great success record
No.
so far. So I suspect that he's just going to continue playing the same game he's playing now.
And Navin, we heard from Biden this week on his classified documents. Now we found another, sounds like one piece of paper at Pence's house. I mean, it does look as if what was found with Pence and Biden is different than Trump, but does that matter anymore?
Yes, I actually do think this will.
Well, I think it should matter. Do you think it will?
I think it will. I think the decorum of the vice president and of President Biden handling this, the fact that it has been cooperative, is actually going to be an easier thing for the American people to understand versus the combative way in which Trump stonewalled not only the National Archives, stonewalled the Department of Justice, the need for a raid. You know, I think that's going to be an easy distinction.
But don't we think that maybe both Biden and Pence will get charged with misdemeanor, Susan? Like, everybody else that mishandles classified, there is sort of intent that usually doesn't matter. Now, how hard they go after you.
Well, I think that would be newsworthy if they get charged.
Well, they can't touch Biden until after he leaves office.
Right.
I think they could sort of.
I don't think that is. I would not say that is guaranteed to happen. I do think.
If you're going to go after Trump, don't you have to do that?
I think that what happens is not that it puts Biden and Pence in more peril. I think it puts Trump in less peril. Yeah. I think it becomes harder to act against Trump unless you go after everybody, despite the distinctions you were just mentioning.
But the origin of this, of course, is not Trump or Pence or Biden. It's Hillary Clinton, and they didn't go after her for her secret server. So how can they go
All
after
right,
her?
as somebody who's probably seen more classified info than anybody here, do we overclassify?
Yes. We absolutely do. Now, that doesn't mean that the rules don't apply to the President of the United States. But do we overclassify? I'm going to tell you all something classified that I read once. It was that there was a new uniform in a particular military, and the women in the military did not like it.
And that was considered
that was
classified?
classified. And come for me, people. Come for me. But that was classified.
Right.
They don't know when to stop.
Mike, Susan, Navin, Danny, what a terrific panel. What a weird news day. Thank you all. Up next.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.